Hey there, Ornithusiasts! Welcome to another episode of Caterwauling with Kristen, a show about birds, the sounds they make, and the people who love them. If you've become a feather fan like me, please like and share this video, subscribe to the channel, and consider becoming a patron on my Patreon page. In today's episode, we're going to learn all about the Yellowbreasted Chat, talk to my good friend Josh Jackson about our musical flying neighbors, and more. The yellow-breasted chat is a peculiar bird. It has a long tail, a yellow throat and chest, and an olive back with white binoculars. Their diet consists mostly of insects and berries. They're found across the continental US during breeding season, and they migrate across Mexico and Central America to Costa Rica during the winter. I don't know if you've ever felt out of place in this world, but the yellow-breasted chat definitely has. It was considered a warbler until 2017 when the American Ornithological Society reclassified it as a chat and the only member of the family Caterwauling. Yellow-breasted chats, or YBCs as I like to call them, are shy birds that skulk in thick shrubs and can be found in overgrown vegetation. To skulk is to keep out of sight with a cowardly or sinister motive. And fun fact, a skulk is also what you call a group of foxes. Now, back to birds. Josh Jackson, thank you for coming on Caterwauling with Kristen.
Pleasure to be here.
You are the co-founder, president, and editor-in-chief of Pace Magazine.
Yeah.
And now you have Birds of Atlanta, in which you photograph birds.
Yes, this is a relatively new thing for me since the pandemic began and I started working from home and wondering what the birds were outside my window from my office at home. Really got into looking at and then photographing and then posting and learning all about the birds of Atlanta.
That's awesome. Had you been into birds before?
Not really. I mean, I am into nature, but
Mhm.
not specifically into birds. My brother had taken me once or twice out looking at birds down at the coast where he lives in South Carolina,
Oh, cool.
and so I was aware that this was a thing people did. And
Yeah.
when I started Birds of Atlanta, I was like, wow, there's so many different kinds here that I didn't know about, and I thought maybe I could get to posting one a day. Maybe I could get to 100 days of 100 different birds that I've photographed around Atlanta, and ended up getting to 150. 150 different species of birds that I saw and was able to photograph around Atlanta as like a novice birder, just trying to figure out what was around me. So that blew my mind. That was a learning experience for me.
That is amazing. Cause I mean, I feel like we look into our backyards and, you see cardinals and robins
Yeah.
but you
There's
don't
like
know that there's
there's
so
like
many
a
other.
10, like there's a 10, everybody knows the blue jay here and on the East Coast. And
Mhm.
but then there's ones that were in my backyard that I'm like, what is that funny looking robin? Oh, that's an eastern towhee. Never heard of
Yeah.
that. Didn't know what it was. I mean, I was completely ignorant of the birds around me.
Your background's in journalism, and I've seen through your post collegiate life, you seem to constantly shine a light on the underdog, no pun intended, with your alma mater, UGA.
Yeah, yeah,
But you started with the Luke Society, I believe,
yeah.
supporting Indigenous health professionals, bringing better healthcare to their communities. And then with Paste, you've amplified voices of artists who aren't necessarily receiving greater support, and now birds. So it kind of it seems to make sense in that way. And I just want to thank you for representing the underrepresented, including now our feathered friends.
Well, I love that you put it that way because, yeah, I mean, we definitely see it that way. When we started Paste, we had friends who were musicians who just didn't seem to be able to make a living doing what they wanted to do. And we thought, how can we help promote what's going on that we think is awesome? And so it just became a magazine about, hey, here's all the stuff we love and think is awesome. And when we moved it online, it became much more than music. From craft beer to movies to video games to when I get the chance to write about birds, I write about birds because they're
Yeah.
cool.
Has there been a good reception for the articles you've written about
Yeah,
birds?
yeah, it's been a little surprising that that has been a thing that's caught on with readers who maybe are coming to us for our TV show recommendations. But
Yeah.
yeah, a few of the things that I've done about birds have done real well, and that's rewarding because I love to just write about stuff I love.
Yeah. Well, it comes through. I've always felt like birds are kind of the first musicians.
Absolutely. I mean, the melodies that you hear from these birds, and that's been something I think is a little surprising to me. Is at first I learned, okay, well, what are all these birds I'm looking at, and eventually it became, oh, what are all these birds I'm hearing, and learning to pick out the different sounds, particularly in spring when all the birds are singing, and we've got the spring migrants coming through. So you've got all these warblers with their really specific um, melodic songs where you're listening for the notes that they're singing, and it's different notes with different birds.
I feel like if we can understand birds, we will unlock whatever the magic in music it is that like a minor chord that makes you cry.
Yeah, well, I mean, and you're a perfect example of where those worlds meet, of being a musician who is able to replicate the music of those birds. I'm curious how that affects your music. Not to flip the tables on you here, but you know
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's all just listening. I feel most musicians probably are really good mimics because you're just tuned in to sound. And that's kind of how it started for me was I was mimicking birds. I had a fourth grade teacher who loved owls. And I thought I heard an owl on at the bus stop and it was a mourning dove, but I like did the call over and over again so I could remember it to do for her. And I guess I did it well enough that she knew what it was, but then just hearing and mimicking these bird songs and um, when I had already been learning music, I was learning classical piano and French horn. So I was kind of already used to communicating with sound and hearing melodies that evoked certain emotions but didn't have words to tell you or describe to you what the emotions should be. So when I started writing lyrics to my songs, I just kind of I think then naturally thought about how certain phrases or words would be, inflected. So,
yeah.
um, for instance, my song "Got Me with Goodbye," which is the hook of the chorus. I thought about how would I say "You got me with goodbye." I think it would be "You got me with goodbye." So then you think da 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 da, and then you just kind of make it musical. So for me, that became "You got me with goodbye," and um, I don't think that would be possible if I wasn't so tuned into how birds speak.
Now we got even interspecies communication where we're learning what the birds are trying to communicate,
I
and
know.
and being able to call back to them. And
I want to figure that out.
yeah,
I accidentally called in a barred owl,
I
and
saw that video. It was
yeah,
crazy.
I just after I was filming because I was practicing, and then I just started crying. But then I also felt kind of badly because I don't know if it was what I was saying. I don't know if it was coming in looking for like a sexy little barred owl partner, and
It's probably just curious.
I just was doing a barred owl call to share with you guys, and a barred owl has flown into my backyard. I'm flipping the camera, hold on. There it is.
well, I felt honored to get close enough to their language to have some kind of connection.
Yeah, yeah, that's really special.
What's been one of your favorite experiences so far? Has there been any birding experience that kind of blew your mind or was magical?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a few. One of the first ones, I was just getting into, okay, what are the birds that come and visit Atlanta? And then, learning, sort of getting plugged into, because there's communities of birders all over, and
Yeah.
learning, meeting some of the birders here in Atlanta and finding out, hey, the special thing is happening where we were having an eruption year a couple winters ago. and all these finches, were coming. We got pine siskins at the feeder every day, and purple finches coming down. But there were these birds, evening grosbeaks,
Huh.
that I had never heard of before, I had never seen before, and don't usually ever come to Georgia. But because of this eruption year, and all these finches moving further and further south than they normally do, there apparently up in North Georgia there were some evening grosbeaks. So I went up. I was hiking one day. Went up with a buddy. We stopped by on the way to go hiking. Didn't end up seeing them, but people were running around and reporting, "Oh, they're over here now. They're over here now." And then I just one morning on a whim, on a rainy Saturday morning, I decided I'd drive back up there and see, and hope that the weather held. And I got there and I finally found them. They were high up in the trees and it was all dark and gray and you could barely see them. And then the sun came out and they flew down, and I had like an hour of taking pictures of these gorgeous birds,
Oh
this
my
huge
gosh.
flock of them just hopping around and posing for my camera. And it was just like, okay, this is worth it. This is like, yeah. So things like that where, I'll sometimes go chase the rare bird around Atlanta just to see something that I don't get to see around here. And when you see
Yeah.
that thing you've never seen before, that that new life bird, it's always an exciting thing.
That's so amazing. I feel like it's a good foray into kind of caring about the environment and, you know,
Mhm.
because they're sort of the most visual vocal connection I think we have to
Yeah,
that.
and I'm hyper aware now of the little pockets of nature around my city, which
Mhm.
I lived in Atlanta for the most part of my life, the vast majority of my life, and there were so many places that I just was unaware of, and it was birds that made me aware of Constitution Lakes and the South River Trail and South Peachtree Creek and all these amazing places to go. Legacy Park, which is 5 minutes from my house, that I didn't know was a public park,
That's
and be
amazing.
aware of what's happening to those places, what's happening in development around the city, and
Mhm.
where these important places for nature, because we've lost so many birds in the
Oh,
last
yeah.
several decades. The
It's
populations
devastating.
are in such decline. I didn't know that either, but just being aware of these things, being aware of my yard and what
Mhm.
plants are good, and planting a couple new native species. Eventually, I'll get rid of all the privet and Bradford pears and all the English ivy, all the invasive stuff that is in my
Right.
yard.
What grows
Um,
easily.
but yeah, I had no idea about any of that. So
Yeah, that was actually what prompted me to start caterwauling with Kristen. Is I read an article that was talking about how we were just losing millions of songbirds every year,
uh,
and it shocked me. And it really is devastating. I think habitat loss is a major contributor to those population declines.
yeah,
Um, is
and
there a lot of deforestation going on in Atlanta? Is
well,
that
I mean, we have one of the greenest cities in America. I am very thankful for how much how easy it is to find big pockets of nature. And yes, there's deforestation, happening all the time. I mean, I look at
Mhm.
where I grew up in Dunwoody, and all the woods that are now neighborhoods.
Yeah.
So that's happening, but there is, there are a lot of people that are working on protecting the places that we have left. There's development of new parks happening. I mean, the West Side Park is phenomenal.
I just visited that and I love that they're using native species in the
Yeah,
park.
it's a fantastic addition to our city. So,
Yeah.
I want my city to be able to develop and grow, but I want to do it in a smart way, and protect the most vital areas that need protecting.
Yeah. I think that's a challenge in general, with humanity is how do we continue to grow but coexist peacefully with our non-human neighbors.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Man, I there was an article that came out where it was research on I don't remember who did it. It was German. But they found that there's a correlation between more bird species in an area and increased happiness.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember that coming out.
Yeah.
I
What do
believe
you
it.
think? I do too. I mean, I know you kind of started getting into birding during the pandemic, and I had been into birds, but I've never heard so many different bird calls as when planes were not flying and people
Yeah.
weren't out, mowing lawns and everything. It was just magical and
Yeah.
exciting.
I've talked to enough people who aren't even like wouldn't consider themselves serious birders, but when they have those encounters, I mean, when you see a great blue heron at your
Mhm.
park, I mean, it brings you joy, and you
Yeah.
want to tell people about it. Oh, I see, like I have all the time people telling me the birds that they saw because now, I've posted enough on social media that everybody thinks of me as the bird guy, even though I've only been like learning about this the last couple of years.
That's
Um,
so cool though.
but so people will be like, oh, we had owls have babies in our backyard, and it brings you joy when you have these encounters with nature, whether it's
Yeah.
birds or um, you know seeing deer in the backyard,
Yeah.
or raccoons, or whatever. That variety of nature, I think, does have a big impact.
Yeah. What do you think a world with less birds, which is kind of where we're going? What do you think that looks like?
Well, I mean, in some ways we're already there. I mean, we
Yeah.
have something like a third of the birds that we would have had, um, you know, 50, 100 years ago. We used to have parakeets in the Southeast, Carolina parakeets. Like we had our own
Wow.
native species of parakeets in the Southeast. They were
I didn't
everywhere.
know that.
Yeah, very tropical looking bird that is an extinct species of bird, that was native to where we live. So it's sad. It's sad to think that the ivory-billed woodpecker is gone,
Yeah.
and it's gone. I don't.
There's not that one
There's
flying
not.
around.
No, I can't imagine that. I mean, I would love to be wrong there.
Yeah.
But when somebody has a non-grainy photo, maybe I'll start to have hope
Right.
again.
It's sort of
But
become the Bigfoot of birds.
yes, so there's several species we've already lost. There's other species that we're in danger of losing. Hawaii, in particular, is in grave danger of losing several endemic species that don't exist anywhere else. So yeah, I think it looks sad. I think you talk about the number of species making you happy. Well, less variety of wildlife is going to do the opposite.
Yeah, I think that's true. Do you feel like you've learned anything about life, or I don't know, do you feel like you're living any differently having kind of gotten into observing birds?
I think it's been wonderful for my own mental health. Spending mornings in the woods, often alone,
Mhm.
just with nature and a camera and a pair of binoculars, and listening and looking around,
Yeah.
it's peaceful. It's a time to think. It's a time to reflect. It's a time to connect with nature. I'm outside more than any time since I was probably 12 and running around the woods and as a kid,
Wow.
like, um, I think that part of it, yes, absolutely. I feel like I've learned a lot, just to be able to relax. I mean, it all started because we were all stressed out and there was nothing to do. And I'm normally a night owl, but I'd have
Mhm.
trouble sleeping, and I'd wake up early and I'd be like, I need to go for a walk.
Yeah.
And those walks became, a huge boon to just my being able to deal with everything as it was coming.
To your note of kind of getting reconnected with our natural world, it's always sort of blown my mind that humans separate ourselves from nature, but we really are a part of nature.
Yeah. I'll tell
And
you what, too, when it's added a new dimension to travel. Like when I go to a place, when I was in
yeah.
Austin for South by Southwest, or in Nashville because we were doing Pace Studio stuff in Nashville,
Hmm.
I would go find the nature trails in the morning before everybody else was up and doing stuff, and I would get to know a place differently than I did before. I mean, I've been to
Yeah.
Austin most of most every year since we started Pace 20 years ago,
Hmm.
and certainly learned more about the nature of Austin this time than I ever had.
Yeah. That's wonderful. The birds have been waiting for you to cover them all these years.
They have, you know.
They're like the extreme alternative music.
TV, beer, and birds, you know, all the
It's a
things
good
that
life.
happen.
Do you have a favorite bird?
You know, that's a hard question, but I think I have settled on a favorite bird.
Okay.
I think my favorite bird is the yellow-breasted chat because it
Oh,
is a
wonderful.
bird that is here in Atlanta. It's one of those birds that I would have never known existed here in Atlanta. It's another one of those that looks like it belongs in South America or somewhere.
Yeah.
Bright yellow, weird looking bird, not related to anything else in the US. Has the weird, you've got to learn how to caterwaul like a yellow-breasted chat because it's got the
Okay.
weirdest little call.
I'll learn that. Maybe
Funny.
I'll do that bird for this episode.
Yeah, and it's one of the, you know, one of the birds I saw early on that I was like, that is not a bird I've ever seen before in my life. And
Yeah.
it's, you know, 10 minutes from my house. I'm looking at this bird and looking at, you know, it was real close to me. So I was like, one of those encounters where you're like, this crazy thing is just right there. What is it doing? This is insane.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I've settled on that as my favorite.
What is your tattoo of?
So it is of a crow. It is I guess I'll here. So this is a crow.
Oh, look at
My
that
mom,
guy.
it's from a painting my mom did.
Oh, wow.
And so that's my version of a mom tattoo. I love the painting, and so I thought, oh, that'll be a fun thing to
That's
have
so
as a
special.
little crow. And yeah, so I had you know, I put a bird on it long before I was paying attention to the birds.
I don't have any tattoos, but I feel like if I were to get one, it would probably have to be a bird.
I think that owl that visited you would make a good,
Yeah, I've had a lot of encounters with barred owls. I think
yeah.
people are now, in cities, but just last night I was driving home and there was one on my mailbox. Crazy.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah, it's so magical. Well, thank you for joining today,
Oh, thanks
speaking.
for having me on, and congrats on the launch of the podcast. I
Thank
really
you.
enjoyed episode 1.
Thank you. Yeah, it was great to talk to Cindy and hear Wilder's bird call. If you know any kids who are into birds and want to be a fledgling on the episode, I'd love to speak with them.
All right.
Cool. Well, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I can't wait to see more pictures and read more stories about your birding adventures.
Thanks so much.
Hi, my name is Harris. My favorite bird is a barred owl. I think it makes the sound hoo hoo, who cooks for you? Hoo hoo, who cooks for you?
And now, my best take at the varying interesting call of the YBC. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please like and share it, and consider becoming a patron on my Patreon page. In the meantime, keep your ears to the trees and your eyes to the skies, and I'll see you next time.